and Afro Quito Carnival that illustrate the impact of the contribution of the people of Cuba. As South Africans were benefiting from the solidarity and the relationship we have with Cuba, medical doctors in our society, they are not just a feature of South Africa, they are a feature of the continent in many developing countries. And the number of students that are there developed to be doctors, to take up posts in the rural areas that many of us think that it is despising to be deployed at. So we'll honor Comrade Fidel. We're hoping that the state will elevate his role to the right level, even if it would mean the president addressing the nation, and even sending a delegation to the funeral as South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, SG.
If you guys met with the veterans yesterday, how did that meeting go?
It went very well, and the outcome of that meeting is now input to the NEC. It's part of the report of the NWC that between ourselves and the veterans, we're agreeing on going to an all-inclusive veterans conference, an all-inclusive MKMVA conference, and ultimately go to the policy conference and give 2 days of the policy conference to what they propose as the consultative conference, but look into the health of the organization broadly, then proceed to policy issues.
Can you please clarify exactly what these conferences will be then, Consultative conference?
Is the policy conference dedicating the first 2 days on the analysis of the state of the organization. Because what we want to demystify is the name. Rather than the name, we focus on the ideas, but involve everybody, think very carefully what can we do to accelerate our movement out of the crisis.
So a consultative conference is no longer on the table?
First 2 days of the policy conference is the proposal before the NEC, is that it must be spent to do what a consultative conference would do. But it should be part of the policy conference of the ANC.
And who would be the delegates?
The manner in which the veterans went about getting the ANC, NEC's attention, is it something that is encouraged?
I don't know how did they go about trying to get the attention. All we know is that they wrote to us and we responded to them.
Okay, SG, let me ask a question. With the last local government elections, there was an analysis that the negative narrative in Gauteng particularly contributed to, the dip in the election results. We're seeing that kind of negative narrative coming up, but this time it's got a bit of a national character. How do you anticipate that will affect the next elections?
Negative narrative is something that is repeated over and over by individuals, by journalists, by everybody, analysts. Then it becomes a narrative. You can't call it a narrative unless there is an element of repetition thereof. The duty of the ANC is to change that negative narrative into a positive one. And you don't change that by spin doctoring. You change that by talking to the programs of the ANC. When we go and do political education, that political education must have an impact and it must change the narrative. When we interact with sectors of society, that must have an impact. When there are issues we disagree on, we must engage. That is the only formula that is sustainable in changing that narrative.
The three questions. The state of capture report, done, dusted, waiting for the court process. Is that how the NEC is going to approach it?
We've given every member of the NEC a copy of the state of capture report, and they're talking to it. So I don't know what the end of that will be.
And the issue of succession, we've heard people saying that the ANC needs to formally open the debate on succession.
We have agreed on the succession that let's go out to the regions, that is what we're doing. And talk principles first, before we talk names. Because when you talk names, you create the stampede I always talk about, that everybody raises their hand, get into the hat, instead of actually having principles where you measure every candidate against. And that is the route we're taking. And we think that it is the right route to agree. We agreed with the veterans that it is the correct route to follow.
And when will this talking to principals end? And the actual...
Talking doesn't end in politics. As politicians, we're professional talkers. So you don't expect talking to end. We must continue to engage, assess, engage and assess.
SG, this conversation that you're having with the veterans, are you not worried that it will drive the voters away from the ANC?
Why should it drive away the voters? Because the only thing that can drive the voters away is when you keep the veterans on the periphery. Then they cry loud in the periphery. When you invite the veterans into the center of the movement, it can drive away the voters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll meet on Monday.
Well, that there was the ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantanshe speaking live from the ongoing NEC meeting in Irene in Pretoria, where he also paid tribute to the late former Cuban leader Fidel Castro, and also joining the list of other political parties that have also been sending their condolences to the Cuban people. Now, earlier on,